The ballroom shimmered under warm golden lights, as if someone had poured liquid sunshine across the ceiling. White roses filled crystal vases, and the air carried a faint perfume of sugar from the wedding cake. I had chosen the farthest table, half hidden near the curtains. From there, I could see my daughter's smile without being too visible myself. This was her night, not mine. The MC announced, "The groom would like to say a few words." I watched him step forward, the kind of man who always looked ready for a camera. He held the microphone with practiced ease. "To my beautiful wife," he began, "and to all of you for being here." Laughter followed. He went on praising the venue, the band, the decor, and himself. Then his eyes swept the room and locked on me. "And over there," he said, pointing directly at my table, "we have a very special guest. I'm still not sure why he's here. I heard he used to be a waiter. Maybe he slipped in with the catering staff." His smirk deepened. "But tonight's a celebration, so let's toast even those who don't know their place." The words hit me harder than I expected. My ears burned, but I kept my back straight, just as I'd been trained long ago on studio sets. Across the room, my daughter's face changed. The smile she had worn for hours collapsed like paper in the rain. I thought about standing, about saying something. Instead, I reached for my glass of water, letting the cold press into my palm. The groom's voice filled the air again. "Here's to all who served tonight," he added, raising his glass toward me, "to the unsung help." A waiter passing my table hesitated, eyes meeting mine for a second. Respect, silent, but real. I gave the smallest nod. Then, from 2 tables over, a woman rose so quickly her chair scraped the floor. She stared at me, one hand over her chest. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice carrying easily through the quiet. "Are you Rick Salvatore?" The room stilled. Phones appeared instantly, screens glowing like fireflies. I could hear the soft tapping of fingers searching online. The groom let out a sharp laugh. "Good one. Every wedding needs a comedian." The woman didn't sit. She angled her phone toward her table, showing a younger man, dark hair, confident smile, standing on red carpets, answering interviews. I recognized the image before anyone else could speak. It was me. Gasps rippled across the tables. "From Heart's Path," someone whispered, "and Streets of Fire." Another voice, deeper, said, "I thought he vanished years ago." My daughter looked like she was trying to piece together a puzzle without all the edges. She'd never seen those photos, never heard that name said out loud. The groom shifted his stance, tapping the microphone nervously. "Let's not get distracted, folks. The bar's open. We have dancing to get to." But no one moved. Screens multiplied, all showing fragments of a life I'd packed away decades ago. A groomsman mouthed my name. A grandmother pressed her hands together like she was seeing a ghost from her youth. I stood slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. My knees were honest about my age, but my spine stayed firm. I buttoned my jacket. The groom's smirk had faded into something tighter, less certain. He extended the microphone toward me. "Care to say something? Maybe serve us a story?" I looked past him at my daughter. She was holding her bouquet so tightly the petals had begun to bend. Her lips moved, forming just one word: "Dad." I took a breath, my fingers tightening around the stem of my glass. The woman who had recognized me stepped closer, lifting her phone so that everyone could see the image of the man I once was. The groom adjusted his tie, eyes darting from me to the guests. He thought he knew the script. He didn't realize I had been rewriting mine for years. "Is this you?" the woman asked again. The air in the room felt charged, as if even the chandeliers were waiting for my answer. And just as I opened my mouth to speak, something unexpected happened behind me. I had just drawn breath to answer when a hand touched my shoulder from behind. The waiter who'd paused near me leaned in and set a fresh flute on the table. "For courage," he said, low enough that only I could hear. The chill of the glass steadied my fingers. I turned back to the crowd and found the woman still holding up her phone like a small lighthouse. "Is this you?" she repeated, softer this time, as if she already knew. "It is," I said. A ripple moved through the ballroom, the kind you feel in your ribs before you hear it. Chairs shifted. Someone exhaled in relief, as if a stubborn picture had finally come into focus. The groom cleared his throat into the microphone, a sharp sound that squealed through the speakers. "All right, folks," he said, aiming for lightness and missing. "Mystery solved. Let's keep the night on track." No one lifted a glass. No one sat. The band held still with instruments poised mid-air. The chandeliers hummed. My daughter's bouquet tilted in her grip, petals bruising under her fingers. I saw the question in her eyes. She had not asked for fame. She had asked for truth. The MC glanced between us and, unsure who owned the moment, stepped aside. A man from the center table stood, pushing back his chair with a scrape. He was in his 50s, suit a shade too plain for the price of the venue, eyes quick the way producers' eyes always are. He lifted his hand. "Rick Salvatore," he said, and the name sounded like a headline and a greeting at once. "I'm Paul Anderson, Channel 7. I grew up watching you. If you're willing, I think we should hear why you walked away." The groom tried to laugh. "This is not a press conference. It's my daughter's wedding," I said, steady. "And this began with me." A groomsman near the back called out, "Let him speak." More voices joined, then quieted themselves, as if the room had voted without raising hands. The waiter slid half a step closer, tray balanced like a shield. I could feel the floorboards under the carpet, the give of old wood that has held many nights together. My daughter took one pace toward me, then stopped. "Dad," she said, "only that." She was asking for the version of me that made midnight soups and terrible lullabies. I was still him. I had to show her. I stepped toward the front. The groom hesitated, then extended the microphone as if it might bite. My fingers brushed his. His palm was damp. For a beat, we stood close enough to hear each other breathe. "Careful," he muttered. "Don't make a scene." "You already did," I answered. Faces lifted, phones lowered by degrees. I looked at the woman who had recognized me. Her eyes were bright with something that wasn't gossip. Gratitude, perhaps, for a piece of her youth returning with a pulse. "When I left the screen," I began, "people assumed scandal or failure. There was neither. There was a call from a hospital, and a child who needed a father more than the country needed another leading man." A grandmother near the aisle nodded, lips pressed tight. A young couple squeezed each other's hands. The bandleader placed his trumpet gently on a chair, as if laying down a sleeping bird. "I kept my name off her back," I said. That was the promise. I wanted her to grow up without my shadow. I wanted her to choose her life without owing mine. The groom shifted behind me, trying to stand where the light would find him. The light didn't oblige. It stayed with the faces in front of me, florist, driver, teacher, nurse, people who understood the quiet work of showing up. The producer tilted his head, measuring tone and timing, the way men in that trade do. I ignored him. My daughter took another step forward, and I felt the air tighten. "Is that why you never told me?" she asked. The room went silent, the way a theater goes silent when the truth walks on stage late. "Yes," I said, "and because I was afraid you would feel you owed me something I never wanted you to owe." A murmur rose and fell. The groom dragged a finger across his collar. He had the look of a man realizing the joke had jammed in the barrel. He leaned toward the MC and whispered, but the MC didn't move. The night had chosen its conductor. From the back, a voice I didn't expect rang out. "He taught my son at the community center," a man said. "Kept that kid out of trouble, never said who he was." Heads turned. The statement landed with the weight of a small, simple fact, the kind that can support a bridge. I felt my throat tighten. My daughter's eyes filled and didn't spill. I lifted the microphone a little higher. Tonight isn't about who I was. It's about who she is. But respect matters. Service matters. If you raise a glass to the people who carry plates, remember that the hands holding those plates keep your celebration standing. Applause stumbled into life, then found its rhythm. The groom held his spot, blinking, caught between pride and the realization that the room had moved an inch without him. He leaned forward again. "Enough," he said under his breath. "Let's dance." "Soon," I answered. The producer lifted a finger toward the DJ. The music dropped to a hush. Somewhere a camera light blinked and went dark, as if even the devices understood that recording was less important than witnessing. My daughter set down her bouquet on a chair, careful, like placing a small animal somewhere safe. The MC, finally sure where to stand, approached with a second microphone. He offered it to the groom, keeping one for me, the way referees hold out gloves at the start of a bout. The groom stared at it, jaw tight, then looked at me. "Tell them," he said, voice thin enough to tremble through the speakers. "Tell them why you disappeared." "Tell them why you disappeared," he said, the microphone shaking slightly in his hand. I took it and felt the familiar weight, not of metal, but of eyes. "I disappeared," I began, "because a nurse called me by a word I had never earned and suddenly needed to. Father." The ballroom quieted in a way that felt physical. I saw my daughter's shoulders lift, then settle. "I was leaving a studio," I said. I still had makeup in the lines around my mouth. The driver had the radio on and a new contract in the glove box. The phone rang with the number of the hospital where my wife was delivering. The nurse said the words, "No one rehearses." There was a cry that should have been two voices and wasn't. When they placed my daughter in my arms, she was smaller than the script pages I carried. A grandmother at the aisle closed her eyes. A young man behind her stood taller, as if pulling himself into the story. I missed a table read the next morning, and every table read after that. I learned the timing of feeding and the timing of breathing treatments. I learned the choreography of rocking a baby at 3 in the morning. Do you want a confession? Some nights I stood in the kitchen and recited dialogue to the dark, just to remind myself I could still remember something that wasn't a lullaby. The groom shifted beside me. "Plenty of men work and raise a child," he muttered. I turned to him. "Plenty do. Many do. Some can. I chose not to. I chose to be there for every fever and every first day of school. I chose to be a face she could find in a crowd." A voice from the back called, "My boy took your drama class at the community center. You never told them who you were." I nodded. Kids are allergic to pretense. I taught them to project, to breathe, to stand up when a teacher entered the room. I told them the stage is not a mirror, it is a window. Meanwhile, I took small jobs. I carried speakers upstairs. I stapled drapes. I listened to mothers who arrived late and tired. I learned a truth I should have known earlier. Fame is loud. Love is patient. My daughter stepped closer. "Why didn't you tell me, Dad?" "Because I didn't want you to pay rent for a life you never asked to live," I said. "I wanted you to choose a husband because you loved him, not because he recognized my face. I wanted you to say no to people because you meant no, not because my name made them nervous." A soft sound rose around us. Not quite applause, not quite a sigh. The producer in the plain suit watched me like a conductor listens for the downbeat. The MC stood off to the side, hands folded, finally content to let the room find its own rhythm. The groom tried to smile. "This is a wedding, not story hour. We should be dancing." "We will," I said, "but not on top of the truth." He leaned toward me until his words bypassed the speakers. "You're stealing our moment." "I gave up more than a moment," I answered the same way. "Tonight I'm returning what should always have been yours. Respect." I faced the room. I am not asking you to clap for me. I am asking you to look differently at the people who refill your glasses. When you raise a toast to those who serve, ask yourself whether you are worthy of being served. A woman near the band dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. The trumpet player rested his instrument on the chair again and watched like a man who knows when to let silence carry the melody. My daughter's voice came steady. "Did you miss it? The lights, the cameras." I smiled at her the way I did when she was small and afraid of thunder. Sometimes I missed the quiet that fell just before a director said action, but the life we built had its own cue. When you ran across a schoolyard and jumped into my arms, that was a curtain rising I wouldn't trade. The groom drew himself up. "So now the big reveal. You're the fallen star and I'm the villain. Is that the angle?" "No," I said. "You are the man who loves my daughter. Tonight you started by making her father small. You can end by making her safe. Which man will you be?" He looked past me, toward the guests who had been his audience until a minute ago. Pride battled with something softer behind his eyes. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The producer lifted a hand. "With permission," he said, "the venue screens can play a short clip. 2 minutes, his last interview. It might help people understand the measure of this choice." The groom snapped, "Absolutely not." My daughter turned. "I want to see it." All faces shifted to me. I felt the hush settle again, deeper now, like theater curtains dropping into place. In the projection booth at the back, a technician raised a thumb, awaiting a nod. The woman who had recognized me earlier stood very still, as if motion might break the fragile agreement hovering over the room. I looked at the groom. His jaw worked. I looked at my daughter. Her eyes were clear, not pleading, simply ready. I lifted the microphone. "If we play it," I said, "we do it for her, not for headlines." The producer inclined his head. The technician's hand hovered over the control. The chandeliers brightened by a fraction, throwing pale gold across the dance floor like a stage washed with light. "All right," I said. The house lights dimmed. Screens along the walls flickered awake. For a heartbeat they showed nothing, only a faint blue. Then my younger face appeared, clean-shaven and overly sure, leaning toward a reporter's microphone. A caption bloomed with the year. The room drew in one breath together. Out of the speakers, my own voice from another life began to form a sentence. Before the second word landed, the groom stepped forward, arm raised toward the booth. "Cut it!" he shouted. "Now! Cut it now!" he shouted, arm stabbing the air toward the booth. I felt the room flinch. The technician's finger froze a hair above the button. On the screens, my younger face waited, half a breath from speaking. The chandeliers brightened, as if unsure whom to obey. I turned and saw my daughter standing between us and the booth, veil like a white flame around her shoulders. "Play it," she said. Calm, final. The groom swung toward her. "This is our wedding." She held his gaze. "Then don't be afraid of truth." The technician swallowed and pressed play. My past opened its mouth. From the speakers came a voice I hadn't heard in years, warmer, faster, less careful. "If fame asks me for everything," the younger me said to a reporter off-screen, "and family asks me for the same, I know which door I'll walk through." A little murmur moved through the crowd. The clip cut to another question. "Would you give up a career at its peak?" The old me smiled, like a man who thinks time is his employee. "I'd give it up for the right reason," he said. "There are roles you take for applause, and roles you take for love." The groom's jaw worked. He started toward the nearest screen, as if he could stop light with his hands. The MC stepped in front of him without touching. "Let it run," he said, soft enough to sound like manners, firm enough to be a rule. The interview shifted to my last premiere. Flashbulbs, a woman in a pale dress holding my arm. The memory of her perfume crossed the hall, a trick of the mind so strong I nearly reached out. The younger me said nothing about the baby we were expecting. His eyes gave it away anyway. I lifted a hand. That's enough. The technician paused the image mid-blink. The past hung there like a portrait. I faced the room. You've seen what you needed to see. The producer in the plain suit cleared his throat. With your permission, I could... No more reels, I said. Tonight isn't an archive. I handed the microphone to my daughter. If you want to ask me anything, you can, I told her. If you want to save it for another day, I'll be there. She looked at the frozen screen, then at me. I don't need the rest, she said. I have you. A woman near the band began to clap, hesitant at first, then stronger when others joined. The applause didn't crest. It gathered, like rain that means to last. The groom stood outside of it, hands by his sides, color rising under his collar. He turned back to the guests. Are we done digging up the past? The microphone carried his impatience to every corner. We're not digging, I said. We're planting, different work, same earth. His eyes flicked to the servers, to the planner, to the producer, as if searching for someone who would agree loudly enough to bend the room back. He found none. Even the band watched with their hands tucked against their instruments, waiting for the next cue. He leaned in close. You're enjoying this. You think humiliation tastes sweet to me? I answered. I learned too early how bitter it is. My daughter's hand crossed the gap and found my wrist. Dad, she whispered, I want you to speak, but I also want him to hear you. I faced the groom. You wanted a laugh, and you used me to get it. You can fix it, not by being smaller, but by standing the right way. Meaning what? He lifted the microphone in a dare. Start with respect, I said. Name the people you made invisible. Name what you didn't know. Let her see you choose correctly when it's hard. He looked at my daughter, then at the guests who had become witnesses. Pride pushed against fear behind his eyes. He glanced at his best man for rescue. The best man looked at the floor. From the back, a man in a delivery jacket raised his voice. He taught my kid for free when I couldn't afford lessons, never asked for a thank you. Heads turned. The truth had feet, and it was walking toward the front. The groom blinked at the interruption. I could see him calculating, the way men do when the old map fails. He lifted the microphone halfway, lowered it, lifted it again. If I say I'm sorry, he asked, so quiet it barely reached the speakers, will it sound like I'm saying it because I have to? It will sound like you're starting where most men refuse to begin, I said. He stared at the carpet a long second, as if something important were printed there. When he finally looked up, his face had lost the shine it wore for photographs. He signaled to the MC for another microphone. The MC handed it over like a solemn object. The groom turned toward the staff first, then to the guests, then to me. He drew a breath, the kind that hurts on the way in. The sound system popped and hissed. The chandeliers dimmed a touch as the DJ adjusted a fader. In the corner of my eye, I saw the booth light shift, and the technician raised his hand, asking silently whether the screens should go dark or stay ready. Before the groom spoke his next word, a voice rang out from the entrance, firm, surprised, familiar to him in a way that altered his whole posture. Son, the voice said, what did you just say about the man who raised your wife? The word son cut across the hall and straight through the groom's stance. I turned toward the entrance and saw a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit, rain freckles on his lapels, the kind of presence that doesn't ask for space, it makes it. His eyes moved from me to my daughter, then fastened on his boy. Repeat it, he said, stepping inside. What did you say about the man who raised your wife? The groom's hand dipped with the microphone. Dad, I was about to apologize. About to is a shelter for cowards, his father replied without raising his voice. Say it now. I felt the room lean forward. Staff paused mid-step. The band's fingers hovered an inch above strings and keys. My daughter's grip found my sleeve. Her pulse ran quick under the lace. The groom cleared his throat. I mocked him. I tried to make him small in front of everyone. "Why?" his father asked. "Because I wanted to look big," he said. The truth sounded raw and unfamiliar in his mouth. The man gave one brief nod. He faced me. "Sir, I'm Ernest. I taught my son that a wedding is where a man shows who he intends to be for the rest of his life. I arrived late and walked into a lesson I should have taught better." "You're here now," I said. "That counts." Ernest looked at his son again. "You will fix this with your mouth first and your back later. Start." The groom turned toward the staff along the wall. "To the servers and the kitchen, I spoke as if your hands were props. They are not. Without you, none of this stands." He faced the guests. "To you, I used a cheap laugh to buy attention. That debt is mine. To my wife, I put pride ahead of protection. To her father, I tried to reduce a life I did not bother to learn." He drew a breath that shook. "I am sorry." His father didn't move. "And what changes tomorrow morning when there are no chandeliers and no band to hear you?" "I ask the venue for the staff list and write each of them a thank you," the groom said faster, finding footing. "I volunteer 1 weekend a month at the community center where he taught. I take classes on humility and service at church instead of only showing up on holidays. I stop performing and start practicing." Ernest's jaw softened by a fraction. He turned to my daughter. "You deserve a man who sees. If he forgets, you tell me." She nodded once and wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. The producer in the plain suit lifted a cautious finger. "There's wisdom happening. Do you want it recorded or kept in the room?" "Keep it here," I said. "Let the memory do the work." Ernest walked toward me and offered his hand. His grip was the kind that comes from years of carrying real weight. "My wife loved your work," he said under the murmur. "She would have loved this more." "I hope we give them a story worth telling later," I answered. He faced the room. "Music will come back in a moment," he announced, not as a request but as a promise. "Before it does, my son has one more thing." The groom looked startled. "I do?" "You do," Ernest said. "Invite the man you wronged to share the first dance with his daughter. You step aside and guard them. That is how you begin to mean the word husband." The groom's eyes went straight to my daughter's. He lifted the microphone with care. "I ask you both to take the floor before me. I will follow your lead tonight and afterward." A hush opened, tender and bright. The DJ glanced to me for a signal. I heard the faint whir of the projector cooling. The technician in the booth lowered the volume sliders and folded his hands as if he had just set down a delicate instrument. I looked at my daughter. "What do you want?" "I want to dance with you," she said, steady at last. The band leader raised his trumpet but paused, waiting for the exact second. The waiter who had given me the flute earlier stood near the edge of the floor, eyes wet, tray held like a standard. The chandeliers lifted their glow a shade, as if dawn had been invited early. We stepped forward. The parquet felt springy under my shoes, like a stage that remembered being a tree. My daughter placed her hand in mine and set her other hand at my shoulder where her mother used to rest a palm when we crossed streets crowded with fans. A violinist touched bow to string and drew out a note that made time thinner. I felt the groom retreat to the edge, exactly where a guard belongs. Ernest stood beside him, a mountain at his back. The guests arranged themselves in a wider circle, not closing us in, but keeping the world out. The music swelled and we moved, not elegantly, not the way magazines frame a first dance, but in a rhythm we already knew. My daughter's breath evened. Her eyes closed for 2 counts, then opened with a light I recognized from childhood mornings when she would run barefoot to my chair and ask if the thunder was gone. Halfway through the song, a detail changed the air. Near the entry, two figures appeared in the doorway, framed by the corridor light. The planner raised a hand as if to stop them, then lowered it, unsure. Ernest saw them first. His face tightened. The groom followed his gaze and lost color. My daughter's fingers pressed into my shoulder. I kept our steps steady and turned just enough to see. A woman in a severe suit and a man with a camera bag stood at the threshold, badges on lanyards catching the gold. The woman scanned the room with a practiced eye that treats any gathering as a stage. She whispered to her companion, who lifted the bag's flap. The band played on, unaware. Our circle breathed, unaware. The DJ reached for a fader without looking up. I steadied my daughter and measured the distance to the door, the distance to the past, the distance to the quiet I had promised us. The woman with the badge smiled like a hook being baited. She took one step inside and raised her hand toward me as if we had a meeting on the schedule. "Mr. Salvatore," she called, voice clear enough to ride over strings and keys. "Channel 7 would like a word." "Channel 7 would like a word," the woman called, badge catching the chandelier light. I kept my daughter moving. "Eyes on me," I whispered to her. "This is our song." Her fingers tightened at my shoulder. The violin held its note like a thread we could walk across. Ernest was already striding toward the doorway, broad back cutting through the circle. The groom followed, not the swaggering man from earlier, but the one learning how to guard. The woman in the suit lifted a palm as if she were directing traffic. Behind her, a cameraman eased the bag down and unzipped it. "We're not doing this," I said, voice steady, loud enough for the nearest tables. "Not here." She smiled the way people do when they confuse charm with permission. "It won't take long. A quick live hit. The public loves a redemption story." "The public isn't married to my daughter," I answered. Paul, the producer who had stood earlier, sprang from his chair like he'd been burned. "Anna, I told you to hold," he said, moving to block her. "This is private." "Then why did the tip land on my desk?" she shot back. "You sitting on a story, Paul?" The band faltered. The violinist glanced at me. I gave a small nod, and the bow found the next phrase. The circle of guests held a living wall. The waiter who had brought me the flute stepped to the edge of the floor, tray tilted as if a silver oval could become a shield when needed. Anna's cameraman pulled a compact rig free. A little red tally light blinked to sleep, threatening to wake. "We can blur faces," she said. "We can keep it tasteful." "You can keep it outside," Ernest said, arriving at the threshold. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "They will finish this song." The groom planted himself beside his father. "Our guests chose to witness, not to feed your broadcast." Anna looked past them, measuring gaps. "Mr. Salvatore," she called over their shoulders, "people want to hear from you. Why did you walk away at your peak? Was there a reason you never spoke? Are you hiding something?" My daughter's breath hitched. I felt it through the lace and bone of her shoulder. "I'm not hiding," I said, still turning. "I'm choosing." Anna took one step forward. The planner flinched, then stood straighter. Staff from the kitchen drifted into view, sleeves rolled as if the building itself had decided to have a spine. Paul held up both hands. "If a camera comes out during a first dance, we burn whatever goodwill we have left in this city," he warned. "Goodwill doesn't buy ads," Anna answered. "Live trucks already on the way." A murmur moved through the room. Not fear. Decision. The trumpet set down again. The pianist lifted his fingers and hovered. I guided my daughter through a slow turn, and we faced the doorway head-on. I spoke to Anna across the distance. "When a man tells you a boundary," I said, "believe him the first time." She tilted her head. "You forfeited privacy the moment you lived on screens. People don't forget a face like yours." "I forfeited nothing," I said. "I paid my dues, and then I paid attention." Ernest pointed toward the side corridor. There's a coat room with 4 walls and a door. If you want a statement later, he'll decide. Not now. Anna flicked her gaze to the camera. We'll be respectful, she said, but her thumb had already found a switch and woken the red light. The lens opened like an eye. My daughter's voice found me in the music. Don't run again, she said. No anger, just a request from the person I had kept safe by leaving everything else. Whatever you say it on your feet. I kissed her forehead. Finish the song with me. We circled once more. The room breathed with us. The last bar rose. Anna lifted a small microphone toward her chin. We're live from the Belmont Ballroom with a name you haven't heard in years, she announced to air that didn't belong to this room. Rick Salvatore is here and... Cut the feed, Paul barked. The cameraman's shoulders tightened, but the red dot held. Anna kept going, words shaped like bait. Is it true you left acting after the tragic death of your wife and that you concealed your identity from your daughter? My daughter flinched at the word concealed. I felt the old instinct to lift her and carry her out. Instead, I let the last note land, the violin easing the room into silence. We stopped. I released her hand and turned toward the doorway. The groom took one step closer to Anna. He'll speak when he's ready, he said. You're not taking this moment. She raised her chin, reading him as an obstacle, not as a person. Moments pass, she said. Records last. The DJ lowered the volume fader until we could hear the choir of the building, air vents, ice settling in buckets, fabric brushing fabric. I walked to the edge of the floor and felt a path open for me, guests shifting like tide. Ernest stood a half step off my right shoulder. The waiter held his tray just behind my left, a polished moon. Anna extended the mic. The little red eye stared. Do you have anything to say to the country that watched you and wondered why you vanished? She asked. I could feel my daughter without looking, the heat of her presence steady as a lamp behind me. I could feel the groom waiting to learn which man he was supposed to be next. I could feel Paul's regret, Anna's hunger, the room's fragile agreement. I took a breath that scraped on the way down. I'll answer one question, I said. Mine. Anna blinked. That's not how interviews work. Tonight it is, I said. She angled the mic higher, sensing a sound bite. Then ask it. I looked past the lens to the people who mattered. What is a first dance for? I asked, voice carrying without the band. To claim the center or to make a promise? The cameraman shifted, uncertain. The red light trembled in his hand. Anna opened her mouth to pivot. From the corridor behind her, a second camera crew rounded the corner at a jog, branded windbreakers flapping, their audio man already raising a boom. The first sound I heard was the count of a field producer, crisp and bright. Stand by, she called. We're live in 5. Stand by, we're live in 5. The second crew swung into the doorway like a small storm. Windbreakers with a rival logo, a field producer with a headset, a boom mic rising over guests who flinched and then held their ground. The new camera's tally light flared awake. I felt my daughter's hand tighten against my shoulder blade, heat through lace, and I set my body between her and the lens without breaking eye contact with the woman I love most. Anna's smile sharpened. Competition, she said to me, half apology, half threat. You can talk to us, or you can be spoken for. Ernest planted himself square in the entry, one palm out, broad enough to be a door. The groom stepped to his side, not in front of me this time, but beside his father, as if the two of them had been cast for a different scene and were finally playing it right. Paul hissed to Anna, you bring a second crew into a first dance, and you'll never get another tip from anyone who works in this town. News isn't a dinner reservation, she said. It doesn't wait. The rival producer lifted her fingers and counted down for her team. 5. The boom floated higher. 4. The cameraman adjusted focus. 3. I lifted my voice so the room could hear me and so the mics would too. No releases were signed, no consent was given. This is a private celebration. Anna tilted the mic. Not when a public figure arrives. I arrived as a father, I said. Public men still get private daughters. The waiter who had slipped me the flute earlier stepped off the wall, tray high like a shield, drawing a thin silver line between the cameras and the floor. 2 more servers copied him. The planner moved to the side and spoke into her earpiece, then pointed at the venue manager who appeared from the hallway with a folded contract in a plastic sleeve. The rival producer didn't blink. 2. My daughter's breath brushed my collar. If you answer to me, she whispered. Not to them. I nodded. My mouth was dry and my voice worked anyway. I left the screen because love asked louder than applause. I didn't speak because silence protected a child. That's the only headline I owe you. Anna leaned in, scent of hairspray and ambition. Is it true you hid your name from her? I gave her my time, I said. It outweighed my name. The groom shifted and I saw the choice forming on his face. He glanced at the band. The band leader raised his trumpet an inch and waited. The DJ's hand hovered over the fader. The whole room seemed to balance on a breath nobody wanted to release. Ernest addressed the cameras without stepping back. You film over my shoulder, and you'll need to explain to your legal team why you ignored a signed private event agreement. He tapped the plastic sleeve in the manager's hand. We will protect this family. The rival producer flicked her eyes to the contract, did the fast math, then still didn't blink. 1. The red tally light pinned the doorway like a hot coin. I could see our reflection in the lens, me, older and steadier than the man I once was, my daughter, shoulders squared, the groom, jaw set in a new way, Ernest, immovable. On the far side of the floor, guests rose from their chairs not to mob, but to make a thicker line. The kitchen staff filled the side corridor, aprons ghosted with flour and heat, faces calm. Paul looked at me with a question. Do we shut this down or perform for it? I made my own choice first. I turned from the camera to the people who mattered and lifted my voice toward the band. Start the music, I said. We don't owe silence to anyone who won't listen. The band answered with a chord that felt like a hand on the back, guiding but not pushing. The violin found the melody again, softer now, like a shelter being built in the air. The groom stepped forward, took the microphone from the MC with care, and looked at the room, then at the crews. This is not your story, he said, voice clear enough to be carved. It's ours. Anna started to protest. The rival producer raised her chin, the tally light burned. The boom hovered like a net. The groom didn't flinch. He turned his body to block the frame and lifted the mic higher. And I realized the boy who wanted to look big had learned in an hour the one trick size can't teach. He would have to say the thing pride hates and love requires. Ernest's palm pressed the air, steadying the room the way a conductor stills an orchestra before the downbeat. My daughter's fingers found mine and held. The producer at the door lowered her hand for the final count. Live, she said. In 3, 2. The band answered first. A bright chord rose like a hand between us and the lens. I stepped with my daughter into that sound. The rival camera tried to slide left for a clean shot, but Ernest moved with it, a steady wall in a dark suit. The waiter lifted his tray, 2 more servers matched him, and the lens saw only silver and shoulders. Anna leaned past them. We can do this the easy way, she called. I kept my eyes on my daughter. Breathe with me. She breathed. The violin settled into a melody so gentle it felt like a promise kept out loud. My daughter's right hand found mine and steadied. This was the answer I wanted to give the country. Not a quote, a shape. The groom raised his microphone and faced the crews. Enough, he said, not loud, only clear. This family is not a set. The rival producer gave a tight smile to camera 1. "We are live inside the Belmont Ballroom," she began. Paul cut across her with the weight of someone who has pulled plugs before. "By entering, you accepted the private event contract on the door," he said, raising the plastic sleeve. "Legal will enjoy this. You have 5 seconds to decide whether tonight costs your job." The boom drifted lower. The cameraman looked to his producer. The red light wavered in his hesitation. Ernest did not blink. The rival producer lowered her hand first. "We're clearing," she said to her team. She turned to Anna. "You're about to lose access for a decade." Anna's jaw clenched. She watched the room hold firm without shouting. She watched the circle breathe in one rhythm. She looked at the groom, then at my daughter, then at me. "We'll wait outside," she said, "for a comment after." "Or you can go home," Paul answered. They backed out under 50 steady eyes. The door closed with the soft weight of a boundary that finally learned how to hold. The music grew warmer in the quiet they left behind. My daughter's head pressed to my shoulder. "Thank you for not running," she said. "I spent years running toward you," I answered. The groom stepped into the light at the edge of the floor. He did not try to share it. He faced the staff first. "I started this night by making small the people who hold up nights like this," he said, voice carrying without force. "I am sorry. I will not forget your names after the tables are cleared." He turned to the guests. "I asked for attention with a cheap joke. I ask now for something better." Witness. Then he faced me. "Sir," he said, and the word meant what it should. "I shrank a life I did not know, because I was afraid to measure my own. I am sorry for the words I chose, and for the pride that chose them. I want to honor the man who chose to raise my wife when fame was easier." He lifted the microphone a little higher. "If you accept, I ask you to share the first dance with your daughter while I guard the floor. When the song ends, I will ask for a second dance, and I will try to be the kind of husband who deserves it." He lowered the mic. No theatrics. No pose. My daughter turned to me for the answer and did not need to wait. "I accept," I said. The band understood without a cue. The melody widened. We moved again, and this time I felt the room move with us, not as spectators but as kin. My daughter's breath found the tempo. The dress brushed my shoes. All those small, unseen years fitted themselves into the space between two notes. Halfway through, the groom stepped behind us like a sentry and spoke in a voice only I could hear. "Teach me," he said. "When I forget, tell me how to stand." "Start by asking what she needs before every room," I said. "Then believe her." The song thinned to its last phrases. I gave my daughter one more turn and brought her back to me. Her eyes shone in a way that belonged to no camera. The final note landed and did not echo. Silence held it for a heartbeat, then applause rose clean and full. The groom approached and faced me in front of everyone. He set the microphone down, palms open. "Thank you," he said, simple as water. He looked at my daughter. "May I have the next dance with my wife, with your blessing?" "You may," I said, "on one condition." He blinked. "Name it." "Invite me to finish it with you. Let her feel both of us keep time." He smiled in a way I had not yet seen on him. Not the grin meant for pictures, something smaller and true. "Please stay," he said. The second song began. He took her hand and led her from my arms with the care of a man lifting an heirloom. He placed his palm at her back and looked down, ashamed of nothing now. "I am sorry," he said to her, not the room. "I am learning. I will not trade your dignity for a laugh again." She rested her forehead against his for a beat, then nodded. They turned, and I walked a slow circle beside them, keeping the world from crowding. When the bridge came, my daughter reached for me without looking. We formed a small triangle and found a pace that allowed all three of us to breathe. Ernest watched with his hands behind his back, a soldier at ease. The staff eased out from the wall. The planner took a single photograph with her phone, then set it face down, as if refusing the temptation to make proof more important than memory. When the second song closed, the groom lifted the microphone once more. "This man is not only my wife's father," he said. "He is an example I needed and refused. I ask you to honor him with me." He turned and bowed his head to me. It was not grand, it was honest. I felt something in my chest loosen that had been knotted for years. Applause rose again, not thunder, more like rain on a roof you trust. My daughter wrapped her arms around both of us, veil curtaining our shoulders, and for a blink there was no hall, no cameras, no past to manage. Only breath and heat and the shape a family makes when it chooses to hold. The band returned to party tempo. Laughter found its way back into the corners. The servers moved like tide, refilling what celebration requires. Ernest clapped my back and smiled with his eyes. Paul gave me a nod that said he would guard the exits if I asked. The door to the corridor cracked open. Out in the hall, I could see the red dots of 2 cameras waiting like small embers in the dark. My daughter squeezed my hand. "Do you want to say something out there?" she asked. "Or do we let the music speak for us tonight?" I looked at the door and the light beyond it. I looked at the man my daughter had married and the father who had taught him to stand still when it mattered. I looked at the tables and the faces that had chosen witness over spectacle. The DJ lifted his hand toward the fader, ready to swell the next song or drop it to a hush. The corridor brightened as the crews adjusted their gear. A producer's silhouette tilted, waiting to pounce on the first step I took toward that door. I tightened my fingers around my daughter's and felt the question in my own palm. Would I walk into the hall and let the country borrow our night? Or would I leave them at the threshold and give my family the ending we had earned? I hope you enjoyed today's story here on the Grey Revenge channel. If you did, then please like, share, and tell us your own story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Help us grow as a storytelling community and be part of this with us. Can I count on you? Thank you so much.